Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the 10 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome everyone. Today I am very excited to be speaking with Schiff from Birthing of Giants. Schiff is the chairman of the board of experts for Birthing of Giants Fellowship Program and executive director of Moonshots and Moneymakers, the Oxford Innovation Conference for American entrepreneurs. He founded Inc. magazine's Business Owners Council, where he interviewed some of the most accomplished entrepreneurs in the world. He has authored or co-authored several books on success, including The First Habit, The One Technique That Can Change Your Life, and Business Brilliant, Surprising Lessons from the Greatest Self-Made Business Icons. Over the past 2 decades, he built and sold 2 media businesses to publicly traded companies, iVillage and TheStreet.com. As far as an introduction of myself, my name is Stephen Halasnik. I'll be the host for today, and I am co-founder of Financing Solutions. Over the last 25 years, I've built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range. One company was on the Inc. 500 fastest growing company, and another was at 1126. And during that time, I learned how hard it was to deal with commercial banks. So my business partner and I started Financing Solutions over 10 years ago. I can't tell you how important it is for businesses to have a line of credit, even just for unexpected emergencies. So our line of credit program is easy to get in place and expensive when used and costs nothing to set up, making it a great cash backup your plan. If you would like to learn more about our line of credit program, please visit us at fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. If you apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file. Just remember, the time to set up the line of credit is when you don't need it. So today, again, I'd really like to welcome Schiff to the Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
Hey, Stephen, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am very excited about today's podcast. There is just so many good stuff inside of it. I know there's a couple of areas that I think is going to be very interesting in this podcast. And so today's topic is Moonshots and Moneymakers, making the leap to $1 billion company. And when you hear that topic as a listener, you're like, yeah, right. Like, I'm going to have $1 billion company, right? But, tell us a little bit about what Moonshot and Moneymaker means.
And then after he draws this aspirational picture of what the ideal nonprofit would look like.
Sorry about that. I don't know how. my phone all day has been going off at the strangest time, so I apologize. Go ahead.
This is technology run amok.
Yeah.
There's a handful of phenomenon, Stephen, that have taken place in the last few years, and every one of them you'll say, oh yeah, I guess I've thought of that or heard of that. But when they come together, they have become a very combustible mix. And so I run a school for business owners, and a very particular kind of business owner, because not all business owners / entrepreneurs are the same person. So if you were at a cocktail party right now and you talked about being an entrepreneur, probably the vision people would have in mind is that you're starting up, you're raising money, it's got something to do with tech. They probably wouldn't think about it much more beyond that. The truth of the matter is, business in America, especially the innovative part of business in America, largely comes from individuals who start small businesses that solve problems for larger industries. And they start these companies relatively inexpensively. We call them starting them at their proverbial kitchen table. What I mean by that is that they usually start because they got some kind of a gig from a client that they used to work for that company, or they know somebody in that field. And so, they get let's say a $25,000 project, and they take a little bit of that money and they hire 1 or 2 or 3 people. Well, fast forward 5-10 years, if they've been working in the right industry and doing a good job, now they run, let's say, a $5 or $10 million company. And they come to Birthing of Giants Fellowship Program, my school, when they want to figure out how to turn that $10 million company into something bigger, something sellable. So the Moonshots and Moneymakers phenomenon came out of that school, where we were watching students come in with their 10 million, 20 million, $50 million businesses. And by the time we took them through our process, they were actually valued at $1 billion. And we were discovering that the path from, let's say, 10 million to $1 billion was actually not as complicated as we thought. I mean, there's plenty of risks involved for sure, which we can talk about. But the path, the actual roadmap became very clear to people. And all of a sudden, the conversation inside Birthing of Giants Fellowship program became, how are you going to turn your Moneymaker, a company that makes money, which is what brought you to the school to begin with, into a moonshot, a company that's valued as if it was a high-flying, fast-growth tech phenomenon. And that's been happening more often. So we created a whole conference around that one phenomenon.
I love it. I wish I had it. I wish I had it 20 years ago. Because I tell you, all the businesses I started, not to say all the businesses, the first 4 businesses I started, well, maybe not the first 4, maybe the first 3. Okay. I thought I would be able to pivot into a much bigger company. Now, I was never under the grandiose theme that I would be $1 billion company. I always liked hitting singles. I didn't like, I didn't like going for a home run. That wasn't exactly my personality.
Right.
So I thought, especially with the second company, which was Expert Seeker, which did great financially, but it was, a small business, right? I got that company to about, $6 million and in revenue, and the profits were really good,
Right.
awesome on it. But the point being is that, and again, I was very inexperienced at the time, but I really thought I would be able to pivot away from that business into something that was less ownership involved. Right. Which a lot of businesses are. Small businesses, the owners are really involved in the success of the business. You take out the owner out of the equation, which is, the sign of a bad company if it can't keep going, and it fails. Right. Now, and this is the other part about this, like the two of the businesses I have right now, which are both $25 million businesses, we took a long time, my business partner and I, took a long time really deciding the type of businesses we wanted, right? And we actually, I would say more my business partner than me, said he didn't want a really big company, right? He just didn't, he didn't want that. I kind of wanted it, but he didn't want it. Right. So I would have been the one going to your school, right? And I would have loved the methodology or even the focus of saying, okay, what do we have here that we can do a little more with, right? Now, how long has Birthing of Giants been around?
Well, this is sort of a reboot of a program that's been around for a couple of decades. This version is about 6 years old, but it's a little bit of the old version too, because the faculty that makes up, it's kind of a great story, but I'll tell it really quickly. Birthing of Giants kind of burst out of the gate about 25 years ago with this really interesting faculty. And in many ways, schools like this are, who is the faculty? That's what a lot of people have in their minds. They also want to know who are the students. But the faculty were a great group of entrepreneurs. Well, fast forward 20 years, and they become some of the best known entrepreneurs. It was almost a coincidence, really. And so all of that original faculty came back to be part of the reboot of Birthing of Giants. And now today they're post-exit, billions of dollars of exit entrepreneurs with a lot of wisdom to share. So on the one hand, I'm happy to say that Birthing of Giants has that original faculty, but even better, it's a faculty that's gone on to do a lot of what they're famous for, and therefore their wisdom as a faculty is off the charts. And so you described the example of who's in Birthing of Giants Fellowship Program to a T, which is somebody who says this company has to be less dependent on the owner. That is the story, because as I often tell people, no one's going to hand you $100 million check and then expect you to show up at work on Monday with the same attitude. So no, you must build a business that can run without you in order to unlock its full value. And that really is what the Birthing of Giants Fellowship Program does.
Yeah, I'm actually a graduate of the Birthing of Giants MIT program that was sponsored by Inc. magazine. So that was a 3-year program that I went through at MIT. with 60 entrepreneurs. Are you related to that at all?
Yeah. So yes. Again, that the fact, I don't know what years you went, but that the
I
original.
think 2009. Yeah.
Right. So that original faculty was long gone. They came back in 2016 with the reboot, but we do hold it at MIT. There's still, it ended up being a little bit of a splinter, because there's an old program and a new program, but the new program has the name of the old program, so it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
But we have, anyway, it depends on what you mean. Is it the same program? It's still held at MIT. It's still got the original faculty, just different owners.
Yeah. I loved it. I thought it was unbelievable that the program. It was. I would highly recommend if I don't know if they still have it, but it was a 3-year program, but it wasn't 3 years. It was every year for 3 years for one full week. And what's amazing, I think there's about 60 to 70 of the fastest growing companies that applied to go to this major conference. And what's amazing is how many of those people who went there with me did really well.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's how our students are too. It's you can't believe how well everybody's doing in this program.
Really amazing. I mean, I would say 90% of the people who went, became lifelong entrepreneurs, regardless if they took the company that they had that was there. They still have them. Usually as an entrepreneur, you're remaking yourself. It's never just one company that you stay with the whole time.
Right.
I know. So what do you think the trademark is of the companies that make that leap to a much bigger, let's say, it doesn't have to be $1 billion company, but a company that, a VC maybe comes in and helps it go public, or, that it's got multiple versions where people are buying the company and there's, it's a bigger company.
Right. Well, you put your finger on it. The first thing that an entrepreneur has to accept or kind of get their head around is the idea that they will no longer be the sole owner of their company, or they and a partner, that they will have these people, we'll call them professional investors. You said VC, venture capital. It could be private equity, venture capital, family office. It could be angels. But the point is, these professional money people come in and you end up building what's called a board of directors. And even if you're a big equity holder, you become an employee to your own company. And that leap is the first and in many ways the biggest leap that an entrepreneur has to make, because a lot of folks will say, nope, I like being my own boss. Yeah, you offered me some money for this company. Yes, that'll put me on a trajectory to build a bigger company, but now I have to share authority with you. Not interested. So that is the very first fork in the road for anyone who's at a moneymaker level that wants to contemplate being a moonshot, is that there's going to be a point in which you're going to need outside money, and if you need outside money, you're going to have to share control.
So let's take a real life scenario of the second company I have, and then tell me how Birthing at Giants would have kind of helped me come up with another process. And I don't know if I would have been a candidate for it, but so the company was called expertseeker.com, right? And so the original vision here was, now this was, that started in 97, I think. And so I got into the business. I hit this. I knew I was hitting a perfect storm of what it did is it placed very high-end computer consultants into Fortune 500 companies. So these people at the time were working for PwC, like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, which is now E&Y. And they were leaving those companies where they were billing out at $500 an hour, but getting paid a salary, and going out on their own and getting paid from me $150 an hour, $200 an hour, and billing out at $350. And so these were the experts. These were the really high end people, the best that the best was. So, so now the vision I had at the time was, now we hit a perfect storm because it was the year 2000 bug going on. There was something called ERP being implemented in the United States. It just needed a lot of these people.
Yeah.
And again, we got it to about $6 million. And, but I knew the wave was going to be over when 9/11 hit. I knew it was over for a variety of different reasons. Okay. And I don't want to bore everybody here, but so So what I also thought too was, the vision of, the staffing company at the time. I thought, how can I automate that so like, now everyone knows Indeed or Monster.com or some of the
Sure.
other job boards. How could I get rid of the recruiter who's involved in this process and hook, these, just have it done automatically?
Hmm.
Anyway, so I struggled making that turn.
Right.
We never really made that turn. The name was good. So if I had applied to Birthing of Giants, what do you think you would have had to kind of helped me with?
Right. Well, so we take everyone through the same process, right? Because what people in Birthing of Giants discover is that whether you have a services company or a product company, a B2C, B2B, B2 government, there's so much in common, but they're also different. And so the process essentially, almost like an air traffic controller, the first thing we have to do is, whether it's a small plane or a big plane, we've got to get them lined up on the runway, kind of equally spaced from each other. So your business is a business that would have benefited probably more from software than from, let's say, robotics. So, that's sort of a difference between, let's say, a manufacturing company that comes through and a services business. But the qualities of those two challenges, let's say manufacturing versus services, are the same, which is we look for opportunities in your business to imply technology that does one of two things. Either it increases the gross margin substantially, or it increases the audience you can access. And the home run is when it can do both. So you take your business and you think to yourself, I'm going to make all the numbers up. You've got 100 clients and they were accessing you for clients. And so how do we increase the audience? So your clients might have been focused on the Northeast, or they could have been focused in America. How do we increase the addressable audience, right? Because that makes your business more valuable. The second is your business had a gross margin. So let's just say it was 30, 40, 50% on those kinds of businesses.
Yep.
How do we increase it? So if you just focus on those two things, forget the word technology for a moment. How do I increase my gross margins, and how do I increase my total addressable market? You will find that technology is almost always the answer. So instead of people saying, I want to start a tech company, in the Moonshots and Moneymakers parlance, we would say you wanted to turn that business into a company that pivoted from Moneymaker to Moonshot, which has to have those two qualities: increase the size of the audience and increase the addressable market. And the better you do that, the more valuable the company becomes. So it would have been, to use examples that exist today, we would have said like Upwork. Upwork is a company that
Yeah.
has a lot of behind the scenes technology that's helping us figure out whether we should work with expert A or expert B. And the things that would have come through your conversation, driven by you probably, would have been things like predictive analytics. How do we figure out which experts are doing a great job? How do we allocate their time the most effectively? How do we price them the most effectively? And so instead of it being a very human process, it would have been driven more by technology. And then you would have said, okay, we know the most common question that our clients seem to have of our experts is, I have a blue screen of death. What do I do about it? Or whatever. I'm doing this ERP implementation and I don't know how to, make change happen across 100 employees at the same time. And once you figured out what the common challenges were, you'd apply technology to it, and you'd find that, as you often hear in technology companies, data is one of the bigger opportunities. So now if you say, okay, how are we going to use big data and predictive analytics? And I'm like short-circuiting a much longer process.
Yeah.
You might say, oh yeah, sure, I can do that, but I can't fund that out of the $1 million of profit we have every year. I want to take home $250,000 of it, and I have to spend the rest on various things. We say, yeah, well, you have to get to the point where you prove out your model, and then you're going to raise money. And now you and your partner who owned 100% are going to own 75 and 50 and 25% of a much larger company that applied technology appropriately to do those two things: increase your addressable market and increase your gross margin. The reason why Facebook is such a valuable company is that its gross margin is north of 80%. It's actually close. It's very close to 90%.
Wow.
And so that's crazy.
It's crazy.
And so, there's a reason why tech companies are valued highly. It's because, I'll just use Facebook as the biggest example. It's got a global audience. So its total addressable market is everybody everywhere that has internet access. And it's got a phenomenal gross margin. And that's why it's worth what it's worth. It's not the technology. It's that those two features are present in however they put it together. we've had people come through our program where what applying technology means is not at all what you think. It's not software. There's a wonderful company based in New Jersey. She runs a meat wholesaling company. So you could call that a butcher, but it's a very big one. It's a $150 million, meat wholesaling company. And when she discovered new ways to take the cow and cut it up so that she could create more product out of every cow, that's called technology. And her gross margin went up. That's a good thing. And it all has to do with treating the cow, cutting up the cow differently. It's not ones and zeros. It's not software. So you have to have a very open mind about how you accomplish those two goals.
Now, did she do that? Did she make that transition while going to Birthing of Giants?
She's actually a wonderful business owner I've gotten to know who has not been through our program yet. I've just kind of gotten to know her and kind of like studied her story. We run a website called How I Did It, birthingofgiants.com/how I did it, where we feature phenomenal transitions from Moneymaker to Moonshot. And actually, I can think of 2 of them that we featured in New Jersey, where you're from, Stephen, that are phenomenal. But these are not folks who went through our program, but there are lots of people doing the Moonshots to Moneymaker pivot around the world.
Did you find that those 2 companies are the ones that you've studied? They kind of started off at, I'm trying to figure out why I couldn't do it, like why I couldn't pivot, right? And I did actually a pretty good job of not working in the business. I'm working on the business, and I don't know. I felt like there was a wall in front of my mind that stopped me from thinking bigger.
Well, the working on the business, not in the business phenomenon is central to Birthing of Giants. I mean, a lot of folks go to our program, as I said, to make it less owner dependent, which is another way of saying working, to use Michael Gerber's famous phrase, honor versus in the business. But the phenomenon, that's you can build a very, very valuable moneymaker business. So that business of yours at $6 million, let's say it had a 30% gross margin.
Yeah, our profits were $1 million.
$1 million. So, you got to get the owner out of that business for that company to become valuable as a multiple of earnings. So maybe that company was worth $5 to $10 million based on that. And if you just make all those numbers bigger, in other words, if you had gotten it from 6 million to 10 million to 20 million through sweat, without ever taking in outside money or without ever really thinking about how to apply technology, then your margins would have gone from $1 million to $3 million, and then it could have been worth $30 million. And so if someone paid you $30 million, in our world, look at Birthing of Giants, if you exit with $30 million, while that is a lot of money, that puts you at the way low end scale of our exits. I mean, people are exiting for $250 million and up in our program.
Yeah, I don't think it was it was a very hard company to sell. And I tell you the truth, one of the reasons why the Entrepreneur MBA podcast says that your mission is to help you get past 10 million is because at the $10 million mark, I learned that's when other companies begin to say, oh, I have some interest maybe in buying you guys. It's like that $10 million mark, unless you have something that's, related, right? So,
well, again, something that enables scale. But so your $10 million number is an important number, so long as your gross margin is okay, and so long as your EBITDA stays.
Because
okay.
With Expert Seeker, it also the timing has to be right for companies wanting to do like a roll up or something like that, which is when they want to buy a number of companies in an industry. And the other thing is what they're really buying is your clients. That's what they were buying.
You see, it's not. So there's a lot of ways to exit. So you're describing one way of exiting, and you're describing sort of the moneymaker exit, which again could be a very big number.
Right.
But you're not describing the moonshot exit. So the the moneymaker exit is going to be private equity, roll-ups.
You're right.
Moonshot exits are tech, venture capital, corporate M&A. And so the moonshots and moneymakers conversation fits into this thing called the innovation economy. And so if you're in New Jersey, where the big, one of the biggest industries is pharmaceutical, the pharmaceutical industry is looking for innovation, right? So they may start something internally, but much more often they're buying a company that has figured something out. And they don't really care. Johnson & Johnson doesn't want your client. They want your tech.
Yeah.
So it depends on what kind of exit path you're going. Look, I mean, one of the tricky things for anyone going through our program is they have to say to themselves, here's the path I'm looking for. And when you choose that path, you exclude other paths. And so as simple as corporate M&A, if a company's going to buy you, often it's because you do something that they don't do, right? You do the sixth thing, they do the other five things. But if you're going for private equity would say, oh, do all six of those. That represents diversity. So you have to choose your path. The very first thing we do in Birthing a Giants Fellowship Program is we basically orient you towards the capital markets. Capital markets are not monolithic. Private equity, family office, venture capital, corporate M&A, it goes on. And so you have to say, well, if I want to be attractive to corporate M&A, here's how I have to build myself. And they could be buying you for clients. They could be buying you for skill set or technology.
Yeah, it's just like what I said earlier on, with financing solutions, it's all self-funded. We don't have any investors, so it's all, our money.
Right.
The discussion that we often had, Keith and I, early on was, do we want to bring in other people's money and build this big, right? And Keith was really against that, and I'm not saying that I was for it or against it. I always wanted to run a much bigger company. So,
right.
But
well, you very much get into when you do that, right? So, we if you have a business that's growing and doing well, but the one thing you don't have is, let's say, money to market it, or you don't, or in the case of a bank, you have, $10 million to lend. You don't have $1 billion to lend. And so that's a moment where you'd say, if I had $1 billion, I could lend $1 billion, but it's important to know that, Stephen and his partner would own less of that company.
Yeah.
But the phenomenon in money is not just that you need to build a $10 million company, let's say with EBITDA of $1, $2, $3 million. It's that when the EBITDA goes up, in other words, when that $10 million company earns, let's just keep it simple, the $10 million company earns $1 million. If the $20 million company earns $4 million, in other words, if the percent of EBITDA goes up because you find efficiencies in scale, etc., that $4 million is not just worth 4 times to the market. It's actually worth 6 to 10 times to the market, because this is the capital markets. The capital markets are looking for bigger deals. They want bigger deals. So they overpay, or they pay a premium the bigger the deal gets. So your multiple on $1 million of earnings might be 10, and your multiple on $5 million of earnings might be 20, just because you've gotten to a bigger deal, right? So it's a very, you have to understand the capital markets. This is the biggest gap amongst entrepreneurs, is that they build companies that they think are valuable, and they'll say, oh yeah, I know a guy who sold his company for this much down the road, but they have no idea the language of the capital markets, which determines so much of why we build our companies the way we build them. I mean, that's day one of Birthing a Giants is, understand the capital markets.
Yeah. What's interesting too is I talk about this a lot, that being an entrepreneur is autodidactic. So it's self-taught. That's what autodidactic means, right? So you start off this little rinky-dink company, right? Maybe nowadays you're working out of your house, right? And, the first thing you're learning about, and this is very simplistic, is about, okay, what type of accounting software do I use? And how do I, handle that? How do I get clients? Those type of things. Well, then later on, and now we're talking about my business, and that is, okay, the company's growing, and how do I finance it? How do I get a line of credit, right? So then you start working with banks, which you had never worked with before, and you start realizing, oh, okay, they don't care about my business plan. All they care about is the collateral I have. They want to look at the income statement and the balance sheet for my company. They want to know my credit score. They want to know all these other things. And you learn that language. And dealing with banks is a learning experience. So now we're talking about, again, then we go to another level, which you talk about the capital markets, right?
Right.
That it's like you're always having to learn this stuff that's all new. That I was a business major at college. What a joke.
Well,
right?
we have a philosophy at Birthing a Giants, which is called the zone of proximal development, which is kind of what you just said. How do you learn the next thing you need to know?
Yeah.
Interestingly, and so part of this conversation is around how do you start $1 billion companies, and so you can actually sit there with the exact same napkin, so to speak. We start our businesses in the back of a napkin, and you could map out a moneymaker, which is everything you're describing, and you can map out a moonshot. And then you can think about, how do you pivot from moneymaker to moonshot if you've already got a moneymaker. But all these phenomenon are all about the zone of proximal development. How do you know what you need to know next? All you need to know is what you need to know next. And that's how entrepreneurs think. I'm starting a company that is essentially designed to be a unicorn, $1 billion company in the field of education, where we have mapped it out to be a unicorn or $1 billion company from day one. And you build it like that. You don't build it to be a moneymaker. But the companies that come through Birthing of Giants, the only way you qualify to be in Birthing of Giants Fellowship is you've already built a moneymaker. So I'm simultaneously showing entrepreneurs how to pivot from moneymaker to moonshot, as well as I'm building my own ed tech moonshot, which sort of takes advantage of all the things we already know. And the Moonshots and Moneymakers conference at Oxford University is designed for everyone. So you don't have to be a business owner of a company with $5 to $250 million. You could just come because you're interested in business. We have CTOs coming, and we have startup people coming, and we have bank presidents coming. Everybody wants to know, how do I map out my path from moneymaker to moonshot?
Yeah, which is like the thing that happened. So my business partner and I, we were my prior businesses from the two I have right now. I did not have a business partner, and then what happened was my business partner and I were in the same entrepreneur organization forum group. So we knew each other for 15 years. Now he had sold his company for a very nice multiple, and then I was transitioning away from the companies I had. I had sold one for a small amount of money, and another one was just it lost its steam. So we went for 3 years looking at the angel funding route, where we were looking to fund other companies, which is so typical of a lot of entrepreneurs that are now out of the business. And we looked at hundreds of companies. We didn't like any of them, and we didn't like this angel funding formula also. And there were so many people losing their shirts doing it, right? So my point being here is, we took a lot of time really figuring out where we wanted to go, like the company that we wanted to open up for ourselves.
Sure.
And so I think people who have a lot of experience, like yourself, what I've learned now is, if I'm done starting companies, kind of that's it, right?
You wouldn't if you went to Moonshots and Moneymakers. You couldn't help yourself. You'd be like, we are in a moment in time, just so you know, Stephen, where it's like, and this could change, but it's almost like you live in, California, and it's 1849, and every time you walk outside, you kick a big chunk of gold. And what you just said is, I don't really bend over to pick those things up anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think I might. I don't think my partner would bend over anymore. So, so to speak. But you know what? It's interesting now in that kids nowadays, like I do some lecturing at colleges, and I go in and I actually talk to the kids, and you would be, I think, Louis, you wouldn't like what I tell them. And because I tell them, every kid is in there is wants to build a company that is angel funded or VC funded. Well, it's more angel funded. Like, they're all looking for money, right? They all want money. And I tell them, there's another way of being an entrepreneur.
Oh, Stephen, you and I are in lockstep.
Oh, okay.
I literally wrote an article called "How You Build a Moneymaker and a Moonshot," and I dedicate it to the students I teach at Rider University at the Norm Brodsky College of Business, who also have been indoctrinated into this idea that you should raise money. And I say, no. Build a moneymaker. First of all, go get a job in a field where you just learn something.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say you took a job at the telephone company, and then you realize, there's a division of the telephone company called the business telephone division, or the whatever division, right? The one that focuses on the healthcare, and they have special needs in healthcare for telephone companies. And the next thing you know, you realize, I could start a little business that addresses a specific problem in the healthcare telecommunications industry. And then you go start that little company with your own money. and you just get something going and you start what we call a moneymaker. Then you go through this whole thought process you and I have been talking about, which is how do you make your company scalable and less owner dependent. But then the last piece is how do you apply technology in a way that addresses the total addressable market and gross margins. And I wrote an article on Forbes that's worth looking at because it's really just like a 6-step process that takes about 15 years. But it starts with do not raise money in the beginning because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the angels, like you and your partner were, are essentially wading into the pool of what's called fail factors. The companies that you were funding had too many fail factors, too many potentials to fail. The 3 most obvious ones are that they didn't know their industry well enough, they didn't have a reputation or a brand, and they did not have a management or a leadership team to help them execute. So a moneymaker has all 3 of those things. So as an angel or as an investor, and if you just look at the way capital markets look at moonshots and moneymakers, the moonshots that come out of our program, the fail factors have been almost eliminated. So their likelihood of success is way, way, way higher. That's why money loves these moonshots that come out of our program. But the moonshots that are coming out of, let's say, startup, with a kid with a dream, the fail factors are too high.
Yeah.
They raised their first $250,000 and now they're hiring their first 2-3 people, only to discover those first 2 or 3 people are the wrong people. And now they've just spent their whole $250,000 on the wrong people. It happens in an instant.
Yeah. The other thing too is let's say you go through the program and let's say you don't have a moonshot, right?
You're talking about going through Moonshots and Moneymakers or going through Birthing of Giants?
Yeah. Well, are there 2 different programs?
Right. So Moonshots and Moneymakers takes place at Oxford University every August.
Yeah.
And it's really open to everyone who's interested in business because a lot of people don't understand how this moneymaker to moonshot pivot works. They don't understand how the innovation economy is working these days. But as I said, once you understand how the innovation economy is working, it's like you're walking outside and you're kicking a rock and you pick it up and you say, oh my God, this is $1 million worth of gold. It's happening very rapidly. But you have to understand the phenomenon. So they come to Oxford for that week.
Gotcha.
Moonshots and Moneymakers. Birthing a Giants fellowship program is only for a very select audience. It's for people who own businesses between $5 million and $250 million.
Yeah.
Not their CTO, not their VP of
It's
anything.
the owner.
The owner.
I'm talking about I would rather have gone to the Birthing a Giants program that you're talking about. That would be, and what my point being too is that even if I didn't make a moonshot, if I went to Birthing and Giants with my company, just the focus on improving your gross margins, that would make a huge difference in anybody. Because like going back to autodidactic, someone who's been in business for 3 years or 5 years, everybody thinks that revenue, it's so common. They think the revenue is the most important, right? The top line.
There's a whole other group of people who think that how much money you raise is the most important. But you and I know neither one of those is important. It's profit.
Well, that's the thing that bugs me with some of the kids that are out there who do go and their job becomes raising money and not running a great business, and building a great business. They're so I'm amazed when I hear press releases go out and that's not the right, how they talk about, that guy's in a Series B funding and he's raised this and he's done this. I'm like, I don't care tell me about your business.
Yeah. And I could introduce you to some great, young entrepreneurs who have already learned this lesson. And, they're students of mine at my work with Norm Brodsky College of Business. But that's because if you have anyone who you love who says, I want to buy a new Louis Vuitton bag or a Chanel this or a whatever, and some sort of fancy brand. And I always say to myself, why does that brand even matter? I mean, it looks like a brown leather bag to me, okay, it's got the Louis Vuitton logo on it. That's about it. Well, Louis Vuitton has spent a lot of money convincing you that if you can get that logo on it, it somehow has more value. The capital markets, but particularly the venture capital world, have spent a lot of money trying to convince everyone everywhere that the first thing they should do is raise money. All you have to do is know that really benefits the venture capital industry. It doesn't really benefit the entrepreneur we're talking about. But neither does the Louis Vuitton bag. I mean, if you want to carry your stuff in something, you can carry it in a lot of different brown leather bags, but you pay 5 times more for the one with the logo on it because you've been taught that. It doesn't make sense, but you've been taught it. Venture capital has taught us to go out and raise money. It doesn't make sense, but we've been taught it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's nothing that I've been formally taught that ever turned out to be true. It's all right. It's all, experience, talking to other people who've gone through it. It makes a big difference.
Well, I mean, I can talk about this in both ways. So first of all, I'm a college dropout. Okay. But I'm also the author of a lot of books that are based on data. So I did my own thesis, if you will, at my own time. I started a school, to teach people, but I teach people who've already proven that they can do something. They've already built businesses. Now we teach them how to build much bigger businesses. So you can teach people who have already demonstrated that they have some savvy in this area to be much bigger. LeBron James is the greatest basketball player alive, but he has a great coach too. Of course, the greatest basketball player is going to have the best coach. I think that Birthing of Giants is that. And Moonshots and Moneymakers at Oxford is for all those people who are not ready to go into Birthing of Giants because they don't run a business of that size, but they want to understand this phenomenon early. And I would say that's an advantage in a lot of ways, right? Because you want to understand what's been working before you even start. But the companies that come into Birthing of Giants, they're 5, 10, 20 years into their journey already.
Yeah, last question I have to ask you. iVillage, that I guess you owned iVillage or you acquired iVillage?
No, I sold a company to iVillage.
Oh, you sold it because iVillage. I think this Candace Carpenter. Yeah. She wrote one of the best books that I have on my top 10 list of books called Chapters, and I thought it was very. I give it to people when they're struggling, not with their businesses, but when they have a transition. The whole concept that there's different chapters in your life, I think, and that sometimes you have to move on to another new chapter. I thought that it was it was a really good concept that's still applicable today.
Oh, cool. I actually never read it. To be honest, but I did sell my company to Candace.
Yeah. So good. Well, unfortunately, but we that's all the time we have today. Great. I thought it was going to be a great topic. I learned a lot. I wish I was a little bit younger and knowledgeable.
I don't know why you're saying that, Stephen. I mean, the average age of Birthing of Giants folks, listen, the great resource of an entrepreneur is resiliency, right? Because you get your butt kicked over and over and over again. So the real question becomes, and I coach entrepreneurs on this all the time, is you're going to get your butt kicked. You're going to get knocked to the ground. It only matters if you get back up. That's the only thing that matters. Well, and when we stop getting up, we lose all the knowledge that we've acquired. It gets dissipated.
Yeah, to be honest with you, this is going to sound crazy. And I'm bringing this up now, but my wife passed last year unexpectedly.
Oh my gosh!
And it's a blow. I'm 57 years old. I have a 13-year-old, 21-year-old who's just graduating college. So I have a history of incredible resiliency and strong, and I am. But talking about getting up off the ground,
and talk about chapters,
right? I have this big chapter. I honestly have enough money to kind of be happy. I like what I do. It allows me to have the quality of life that I like. So I think I probably from this point have quality of life businesses and not moonshot businesses.
Yes. And that's super important, right? Because when you do get into that moonshot thing, you are managing a lot of craziness, a lot of other people's agendas. And what you just said to me is you just want to manage your own agenda. And I think that's very straightforward and healthy. But
the excitement of that next, of if my wife hadn't passed, the next chapter, do I want to make that moonshot leap, which means a lot of hours? It would have been an interesting and intriguing thing that I would have raised to my business partner too. Yeah. So anyway, again, I'd like to thank so very much Louis Schiff from Birthing of Giants for coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend. And also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And please give us a review if you like our podcast. It really helps us spread the word out. They use those reviews as 5 stars to help rank us higher. So we would appreciate it. And if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. Louis, if anyone wants to get in touch with you or your organization, how do they go about doing that?
It's as simple as birthingofgiants.com, where you'll learn about the fellowship program. You'll learn about the Moonshots and Moneymakers conference that's taking place this August 8th through 12th at Oxford University. And for free, anyone can sign up for How I Did It, which is our video program where you can just watch the case studies by video of some of the most amazing entrepreneurs you've ever met.
That's cool. And if our listeners are interested, I tweet daily, probably more like 3 times a week. And my handle is at Halasnik. So it's SHALASNIK. I want to thank you all for listening today. And just remember that as an entrepreneur, you have to keep learning and you keep get better and better and better. And I think today's a good example of the different chapters in your entrepreneur life. And one of them is going to be potentially capital markets, which would be a very interesting chapter. I know I'd be interested in even know if you can skip a chapter and go from being a small business to maybe really understanding the capital markets much better. And maybe you can get there quicker that way. Maybe that would have helped me a lot. All right, everybody, have a fantastic day. Spring's around the corner. Try to get outside, enjoy the really good weather as it comes along. And again, thank you for listening to the Entrepreneur MBA podcast.